All right, well, welcome to this meeting of Carpinteria Birdwatchers for November 19th, 2020. This is going to be a little bit of a, less formal meeting than we've had a lot of times. I've mentioned before that I'm very involved in organizing for the Christmas bird count and have less time to organize meetings. So, we'll have basically a discussion of the Christmas bird count is what I have on tap for today, the Carpinteria Christmas count, which is coming up on December 19th. But before we get started on that, does anyone have any cool birds they've seen in the last few weeks that they want to share? Just feel free to unmute and if you wave at the screen, it's sometimes hard for me to see, I can't see everybody, so maybe I'll miss that you're waving, but if you can just unmute and share whatever you have to share.
We had a nice day last weekend. Jenny and I had a 3 rare bird day: Costas hummingbird, yellow-breasted chat, and northern water thrush, all in the same morning. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, I saw that at eBird. That was great. And all of those are species that, conceivably could hang out until the count day. So definitely every chance we get to see them and record where they are and how you saw them is super helpful. That's definitely good advanced intelligence for the count. Anyone else have any fun sightings they want to share?
We did see a snow goose.
Did you see those snow geese have been up at Sandpiper Golf Course, or was this somewhere else?
It was one all alone at the Marsh at the reserve.
Oh, neat.
Yeah,
that's great.
And then a red tail chased them away.
That'd be very exciting to see. Yeah, that's a species, snow goose that we could totally get on the count, and we could also totally miss. I forget what the statistics are for that species, how many times we've had it, but it's not a lot. We've had it only a few times. So, yeah. Okay, well, I'm going to go ahead then and move on. And I have a sort of a presentation prepared, so I'll go ahead and share my screen. And let's see if I can remember how to do this right. Okay, so if I've done this correctly, you should be seeing my browser window. Okay, so this is the 15-mile diameter circle within which the Carpinteria Christmas bird count will take place. The date of the count again is December 19th. It is the first Saturday of the count window. If you have not yet signed up and you are willing to participate in the count, I encourage you to sign up. There's a sign-up form that's linked from the blog at carp-without-cars.org. It's pretty easy to find. I think the URL is carp-without-cars.org/CBC. But there's also, that link should also be in the description for the YouTube live stream for this meeting, which I just realized I forgot to update, so it won't be there yet, but it'll be there shortly. Probably right after this meeting, I'll update it with it. And it's also, that link is also in the blog post for this meeting. So, so this is our count circle. As I say, it's 15 miles in diameter. A large amount of it is very difficult to access. So basically, this whole wedge of the pie here that I'm outlining with my cursor, we get very little, if any, coverage in that part of our count circle. The large majority of our effort is here along the south coast because that's what we can get to. So, that's fine. I mean, that's, our numbers reflect that. But there's a few sites I'm just going to talk about. And, for anybody who is, sort of on the fence about whether or not you want to do the Christmas count, maybe, if we talk about some of these cool sites, these cool locations, you'll be inspired to go out and bird there. And that would be great because it helps us gather information before the count, what birds are there. You might see a rarity and then we know to highlight that and look for it on count day. So I'm going to just go through a few of, I call these the important sites, but these are just a sampling. We have many important sites that I'm not going to cover. And if you've done the count before and there's a particular place you've done that I'm not talking about today, please don't feel that I'm dissing your location. Your location is still critically important for the count. And basically any place you feel inclined to bird on count day, I would love to have your bird data included. So let me go on and talk about one of the the really special sites. So this is a site that is relatively difficult to access, and this is the part of our circle that's out in the Santa Barbara Channel. This is our pelagic birding portion. And that is, relatively tough to get to if you don't have a boat. But fortunately, we have access to a boat. The very kind people at Santa Barbara Channel Keeper for a number of years have taken people from the Carpinteria Christmas bird count out so they can do some real pelagic birding in our count circle. So here is an example. Here's a photo of the boat. This is research vessel Channel Keeper. And keep our fingers crossed that the weather is good. This year, the getting a spot on the Channel Keeper for the count is probably going to be tougher than usual because we're going to want to limit the number of people. Again, as part of the COVID-19 guidelines, we're trying to make sure that we keep keep the groups isolated and don't create opportunities to spread the virus. So if I'm lucky, I'll be able to talk Dave Perexta into going out, as he has done many times previously for the Carpinteria account, and he is basically at the top of my personal list of people that I really, really, really want to make sure they do the count if I can persuade them by any means. So because he's a phenomenal pelagic birder with vast expertise. So anyway, hopefully he'll be out there on the boat, and if he is, all of us, including the count compiler, can relax about the pelagic species. So either be there and we'll get them, or they won't be there and we won't get them. But if they're there, we'll get them. So that's good to know. So another site that's also quite tricky to get access to is Jameson Lake. And I've talked about this in previous meetings, but this is this little, it's a freshwater reservoir on the upper Santa Ynez River. It's out there in the backcountry. Basically, this light colored line here is the crest of the Santa Ynez Mountains that you can see behind Carpinteria when you look up in the hills. And this is, on the other side of that. So you can't see it in this view, but this is down in a valley. And getting there basically takes several hours driving over dirt roads, and you need special access because the Forest Service has locked gates. In previous years, we've had the dam caretaker who works there for the Montecito Water District, who has helpfully gone in there with us and given us access and taken us out on his boat to go do some semi-pelagic birding on Jameson Lake. And this is a really important piece of habitat for us because it's in the inland part of our circle, which we otherwise get very little coverage at. It's an inland freshwater lake, which again is a habitat that we really don't have much of anywhere else in our circle. So the team that commits to getting out there to Jameson Lake, which is a whole day affair, and I very much appreciate it, whoever I can talk into doing it. They always get us some unique birds that we don't get anywhere else on the count. So I have a video I was going to share. This is from 3 years ago, and it's basically a video I shot when we went out to Jameson Lake. And this was a sort of special count year because this was when the Thomas Fire happened and basically was burning in the hills above Carpinteria on our officially scheduled count day. And we had to postpone the count and then reschedule for the last day of the count window. And on the last day of the count window, we were able to get in, and it was tough, again, because there was a lot of access restrictions, even more than usual, because it was a wildfire had just burned through there and the Forest Service roads were all closed. But Alan Pritchard, the dam caretaker, who had to evacuate, it's a really dramatic story, as the flames were coming in and the wildlife was fleeing, like that scene in Bambi, with the embers coming through the trees. That's what he was driving out in. But he was able to get back in, and this was now a few weeks after the fire, but there were still smoldering embers in there. And it was just a really fascinating experience for me, having been into there for the count a few times before, or on scouting trips a few times before, just to see how the landscape had been transformed. So I was going to go ahead and show this video. It's relatively short. Again, I don't have a lot of prepared content. Some of you have seen it already because I think I showed it, a few years ago at a Carpinteria Birdwatchers meeting, but I'm gonna go ahead and show it again. So without further ado, here is our trip into Jameson Lake in January of 2018. Let's see, I got to enable sound though. That would be helpful. To do that, I apologize. I've got something, this is not gonna work. Hold on a second. There we go. Okay. So hopefully I've not screwed this up. Give me a hand, give me a thumbs up if you can see this. Excellent. Okay, and we should have a little bit of audio here as well. This is our crew heading in. And that's Alan's car in front of us, his Jeep. So here we are descending the dirt road coming down from the Santa Ynez Crest. And this area had not burned, so it's kind of interesting. There were these little patches that had not, but then once we got down to the valley floor, it was like a lunar landscape all the way to the lake. This is down near the Santa Ynez River. And this looks like smoke, but this is just fog for the most part. It's kind of, there was some low-lying fog as we headed in. The thing I thought was interesting here that I was trying to get a shot of, I'm not sure how clear it is that the telephone line, or the power line, I don't know what it is, this line that runs into the dam, the insulation had melted, so you had like this these spots where the bare wire had the insulation hanging below it. And here we are out on the lake, facing some ducks. I can't remember what those were there. And the thing that struck me, having been there a few times before, when it was not in the aftermath of this fire, was just how quiet it was. I mean, I'm usually very keyed into bird vocalizations, certainly on count day when I'm trying to get as good a list as I can. And like this is an area kind of on the northwest shore of the lake that has always been one of the birdiest spots when I've gone out there. And it was just dead silence. There was just nothing moving. We did get some birds though. We had, and that was interesting to me too, just like what birds are still there after a fire like this goes through. And there was a fair amount of woodpeckers. Apparently woodpeckers are okay after a fire. They can go in and there's lots of dead grubs in the trees that they can dig out and eat. There were some water birds associated with the lake. And then this was interesting. There was a termite emergence that happened. Like it had just rained a few days before, and there's all these termites living in the leaf litter. And you can't really see it in the video, but there were just these little bugs coming out, and the birds were just going berserk. There's this dark-eyed junco there in the middle of the screen. There's a Buick's wren that came in, and they were, totally ignoring us. Like, this is just a shot with my phone. This is not any telephoto or anything. And this bird is hopping around 5 feet in front of me. So that was sort of a fun thing to see on a day when there wasn't a lot of life visible, that there were still these pockets where, the birds were doing what they needed to do to survive and navigate the aftermath of this fire. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and stop that video. So practically at the end anyway. And we'll move on to the next slide, if I can figure out how to exit from the video. There we go. My apologies for being kind of inept. So the next site I'll talk about is Carpinteria Creek. And this is a very important site for our count. And I'll go ahead and switch to Google Maps and sort of zoom in to show it to you. And the thing that makes Carpinteria Creek such an important part of our Christmas count and such an important, like regionally important bird watching site is that it's this really prime riparian habitat. It's a, a major watercourse with a lot of big trees. It's never been channelized, unlike most, watercourses in Southern California. So it's got this very dense riparian vegetation, and it's super popular with birds. And a lot of the sort of rare wintering birds that we get, a place like Carpinteria Creek is a really great place to see them. It is not unusual for there to be 2 or 3 different species in there in Carpinteria Creek that we get nowhere else in the count. So, and it's going right through the middle of town. So, we don't have the same issues we have with access getting to a place like Jameson Lake. It was sort of in the local birding news this past week or two. And some of you I know already know about this if you're following on the SBCO birding email list. But there was a kind of unfortunate thing that happened where in this part, and I'll just summarize it briefly because again, I don't really have a lot prepared to talk about otherwise. But this part of the creek here, so just north of the ocean, you get down into the lagoon and the State Beach campground, often has a lot of good birds in it. And then this part of the estuary just upstream of the railroad tracks next to the Carpinteria Sanitary District plant here, is a really important spot for censuses of birds in this habitat. This is the end of 6th Street and the Lou Grant Parent-Child Workshop here. And this little stretch of grass here became kind of controversial in the last week. This over here is employee housing for the state park and the State Beach. And, there's a long history of birders accessing the creek and accessing the wall next to the sanitary district plant to bird this section. And typically we walk across this grass here, and there's one or more residents in the state park housing who have taken exception to this recently and feel that this should be their front yard and birders shouldn't be walking through there. So, there's some contention and disagreements, and it kind of escalated in the last few weeks, and there were some harsh words, and there was talk of putting in fencing, and then there was talk about, gee, you can't put in fencing without a permit, and have you got a permit? And it sort of escalated, and the word came down from the regional park administrator that no, there is no plan to put in fencing. So we all kind of took a deep breath and relaxed, and birders can continue for the time being to access the creek via this little grassy strip. But I put a post on the SBCO birding email list today, kind of summarizing a Zoom call that we had to kind of talk about the issue and work out options. And the point I tried to make is, for me personally, I feel like the 42 years of birding in this location, we have established a legal right to cross this grassy strip here as part of that. But, people living in this employee housing do have privacy concerns and legitimate privacy concerns. So, I encourage people to be respectful, and to the extent they can to, if you can avoid going through that area, then by all means avoid it. Right now, the water levels in the creek are low enough that you can actually drop down into the creek bed if you scramble a little bit at the end of 6th Street, and then you can walk the creek bed south and then climb up onto the embankment down here. That won't be possible if we get a good rainfall and the water level goes up. There's also likely to be some construction work in this section of the creek. They're doing some work on retaining walls there to deal with erosion issues. So, if something like that happens, then clearly we would have a temporary loss of access. But in the meantime, if people try to be good neighbors and, be respectful of people, who are living alongside this unique habitat, I think we can all get along, and hopefully the tensions will de-escalate a little bit. But anyway, that's Carpinteria Creek.
Hey, John?
Yeah.
I have a question on the Carpinteria Creek.
Yeah.
We're up in the creek, way in the other end, about a mile up.
Mm-hmm.
If we went down to the creek and started walking all along to the estuary, do we have to split our count, our eBird count?
Well, you don't have to. eBird is pretty, easygoing about that. They don't have a lot of ability to force people to split their counts up into separate lists, but it's preferable that you split it up.
Okay.
There is one hotspot for Carpinteria Creek, and I think it's located right around here, just around Carpinteria Avenue.
Yep.
I think when I bird it, my practice is to use the Carpinteria Creek hotspot, even though I'm often birding kind of down here more towards the southern end of the creek. And then there's a separate hotspot for the Carpinteria Creek estuary. And just as a personal practice, I switch over and start a new list at the railroad tracks. Typically, I use that as the dividing line. Up here, if you're on the north, you're up on the north side of the freeway.
Yes.
It's kind of it's up to you. I mean, the argument from the eBird side is that there's more scientific utility to it. There's more value to your list if it's smaller chunks. So they say as a recommendation, I think it's like 3 miles or 5 miles. Like there was a really interesting online seminar they did the other day when eBird itself was down for a couple of days. I don't know if all of you are as focused as I am on eBird for your daily bird news, but it was a very difficult couple of days there where there was no eBird. But thank goodness it's back again. But during that time, they had this sort of online chat, and some people on the team, it was really informative, and I liked it a lot. They were talking about the different kinds of uses they make of the data, the citizen science data that they collect in their database. And they differentiate in terms of quality. So if you have a complete list, right, where you say, no, these are all the birds I was able to identify, that marks your list of being of higher scientific value. And if it's a short list in duration, like if it's not spanning more than 3 hours or so, that boosts it up in quality. If it doesn't cover more than a certain distance, that boosts it up in quality. So, I would say don't go nuts about it, but, like I try and, break my lists up to if I'm, birding for more than a few hours or covering more than, 4 or 5 miles, and I'll try and split it up. And I kind of know where all the established hotspots are too. So, if I know that I'm traveling between one vicinity of one hotspot to another vicinity of another hotspot, I'll typically try and pick, some sort of recognizable boundary that I can use in the future. And I'll kind of switch over my list at that point and start a new list.
So we normally do split it up when we're walking on the creek. And I just was wondering, if that's the right way to do it. And we have been doing that. Now, if we were doing the Carpinteria bird count, is that as important?
I would say no, it's not any more important. And it's not even like for the Christmas count, it doesn't make as much difference to me whether you split the lists up into smaller lists. It's a little bit helpful for me still because, some people take a different approach to organizing a Christmas count. I'm pretty loose about letting people overlap in their coverage. Like I'll go out there and actively recruit people I know who are really good birders and say, look, if you'll come bird in our count circle on count day, you can go wherever you want. You can just freelance, if there's any place you want to hit, go there. And there may well be another group assigned there, which I think is fine, to the extent that people keep shorter lists in duration and in distance, it makes it easier for me to dedupe the results. So if I get one merged list that covers 5 different locations, that's a little tricky because if they have 30 crows on their list, well, are those the same 30 crows that this other group had in a corner of their list, or are there different crows in there? And, I make the best guess I can, but the guesses will be better if the lists are smaller, and it lets me more easily figure out where the overlap is.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, well, and thank you. And thank you for the implicit promise to cover the Carpinteria Creek area, if not on count day, maybe in the run up to count day at least. So we make sure we have a good chance at getting those species. And yeah, I am deeply envious of your backyard here that you have access to the creek there. If I lived there, I would be dropping into the creek probably every morning, and that would be my birding for the day. I'd be good.
I only got poison oak once.
Yeah, that is one of the downsides of this riparian habitat. Is you got to learn where the poison oak is, and I'm pretty sensitive to it. So if I don't pay attention, I will regret it later on. All right, well, I'm going to keep moving and talk about another really key piece of habitat, which is the Carpinteria salt marsh. And I'll go back to the Google map and talk about what that looks like. I mean, a lot of you are familiar with it. Most of you probably have birded at the Carpinteria Salt Marsh. For the Christmas count, we pretty much divide it up into two pieces. There's the public access part that is centered on the Carpinteria Salt Marsh Nature Park, which is over here on the eastern part of the park next to Ash Avenue. And typically we have a group that goes in there and that's their site, and they spend a good amount of time in there. As part of the organizing, I'll be either myself or with helpful co-conspirators trying to contact people who've in the past given us access to their residences out here and in the sort of private road out here on the shorefront. And that gives us the ability to walk down and actually go through the gate and walk out here. The marsh entrance out here is typically a very good spot for shorebirds and waterfowl. They like to hang out in the lagoon there. So if this group that does the Salt Marsh Nature Park can get all the way out to there, it typically helps a lot in terms of their list. And then we'll have a separate group that goes into the restricted access part of the salt marsh, the Carpinteria Salt Marsh Natural Reserve that the University of California operates. And you need special permission to get in there. And these days you need extra special permission because they have special guidelines due to COVID-19. And with the virus having a bit of a resurgence, it's not clear to me that it's possible that we would actually get more restrictive access as we get closer to count day. So I'll have to be in touch with Andy Brooks and figure out what access we can get on count day. But hopefully we can get a team in there. And then what they typically do is they're entering here at Estero Way, and they go through the locked gate there, and then they'll walk this causeway out to the entrance lagoon area, and maybe wrap around this part of the marsh and see what they can get in there. If we can, we'll also get access to the private road, which is a separate set of permissions we need to get to come in on this side and walk along this part of the marsh, which is actually a really good part. This whole section of the marsh is very difficult to see otherwise, and there's often pretty good birds in there as well. So it's a very important piece of habitat for us, and helps a lot in terms of our species total. And I'm kind of just zipping through this, and you're all very good about staying muted, but I do sometimes feel like, have I put them all to sleep? If you have questions, feel free to interrupt and ask questions, and it'll make it more fun for me too if you're jumping in and interrupting a little bit. So, if we had the opposite problem, I'd be gritting my teeth at all the interruptions, but we definitely don't have that problem. So feel free to shift us in the other direction.
I wanted to ask,
yeah.
if can you go from one place to another place?
Yeah, you certainly can. Again, I'm pretty relaxed in my Christmas count organizing. I'm happy to have people participate, and anything that makes them happier about participating works for me. So if people want to visit multiple spots, I'm probably okay with that. Depending on the details, we have to discuss it. It's nice to have some degree of organization. Again, part of one of the goals, not maybe the most important goal, but one of the goals of the Christmas count for me is to try and get as many species as we can. And if we split people up and sort of divide up the landscape, we can do a little bit better job at that. Because during the prime birding hours, in the morning, if everybody's in the same spot, then we're missing birds we might be getting in another spot. And really habitat coverage is key. So if someone's doing the beach, that's great. If someone's doing the chaparral, that's great. If both those people are doing chaparral, we're not covering the beach. So, I've got a certain interest, some people are very helpful with that. They're like, hey, put me where you need me. And I'm like, oh, perfect. Okay, I need you here. And I can sort of deploy them like, pieces on the chessboard, and it all works out great. Other people, and this is fine, completely fine. Other people very much want to bird a certain place. Like they've always done that spot. They want to do that spot. It's their spot. Also totally fine. And if people want to do multiple spots, I mentioned we don't have access to a lot of our count circle, but we've got so much habitat in terms of what we do have access to. Again, I study what the Santa Barbara count does and how they're able to consistently get so many more species than we do. And then, in fact, almost all other count circles do, because they're definitely in the top tier of Christmas counts. And it's not just that they have, coverage in most of their circle. They can actually get into the remoter parts because there just happen to be roads that go in there. It's the level of, it's the amount of human resources they have and the level of specific scouting info that they gather. You know, this South Coast residential areas with the ornamental plantings, exotic plantings, eucalyptus and Cape honeysuckle and these other plants are very attractive to wintering vagrants, these species that should be wintering further to the south, but for whatever reason, you know, a few individuals will hang around here. And if you can find the specific hedge or the specific flowering tree, you know, that in that week of the count is where they're hanging out, you will get those species. And they do an amazing job of that up in the Santa Barbara Circle. So to the extent people are willing to get out there and bird weird little corners of Carpinteria, that's great. You know, Eric Culbertson has been out of town at school, but when he's around for Christmas count season, it's a wonderful thing for the count organizer, because he is out just walking the streets and he'll be like, oh, there's these tipuana trees on this sort of weird side street in Carpinteria, and I found a Lucy's warbler there. And I'm like, yay, you know. So, you know, yeah, multiple places is fine. And, you know, again, whatever makes you happy, you know, wherever you want to bird, I prefer that people, you know, coordinate it with me, and then I know, you know, oh, if that's being covered, I can put other people somewhere else. But yeah, you know, and it's.
So what if it's whimsical?
Well, you know, a certain amount of whimsy is okay too. I mean, if whimsy is what it takes for you to participate, Carla, then have at it. Be whimsical. You know, I want you to be, you know, certainly be accurate in as you can in your recording of the data and the data you submit. And there is some extra, you know, there's some effort recording you need to do for the Christmas count in particular that is separate from what you record in your eBird list. But with that exception, you know, yeah, whimsy is fine.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah, don't whimsically report, you know, that you had a whooping crane or something. I mean, that would be a little too much whimsy, but within reason, whimsy is a good thing.
Pictures will be offered.
Yes, that's right. Yes, when you report your whooping crane, definitely see if you can include photographic documentation. That would be good.
Okay.
Okay, Lake Jocelyn. So this is another really, you know, important but sort of surprisingly kind of obscure and nondescript little corner of our circle. So over, and a lot of you have been there, I know, because it often has really interesting birds. But in the sort of, let me get oriented here. We'll go back to the 2D map and put north at the top so you kind of see where we're at. So here we are again looking at Carpinteria. In the back part of Carpinteria, the 192 comes along, and you follow it down here, and where it makes this bend, am I in the right spot? Yeah, there's this little lake, quote unquote, which right now looks more like it does in this image, which is to say it's more sparrow habitat than duck habitat at the moment. But what this is it's a little collection basin, and my admittedly vague understanding of how this works is that the farmers who farm this land around here use it as a place to collect rainwater so that their fields don't flood, so that when there's a heavy rain, they put the water in here. And it's great for birds because we get this inland freshwater, you know, wetland habitat that is in very short supply otherwise in our circle. So hopefully between now and count day, we'll get some rain and that basin will fill up, and we'll get some interesting ducks and possibly shorebirds and things like that in there. It's still a really neat spot to bird. And you know, again, in this context where I was talking about the access issues and sort of private property concerns around birder access at Carpinteria Creek, I want to kind of talk just really briefly about how to bird Lake Jocelyn, because you know, there is this sort of low-key understanding with the property owner there that it's okay for birders to go in there. But I want to make sure that people understand how to bird it and do so in a way that is, you know, respectful of the property owner's wishes and avoids us, you know, losing access to this really key piece of habitat. So basically, if you come out the 192 from Carpinteria, you know, you drive along, and like a lot of people are familiar with Shepherd Mesa. So this is the turnoff for Shepherd Mesa here. But if you continue along the 192, it comes to this corner, and it's kind of a blind corner, so you want to be careful here. But there's a little margin here that you can park in, and I'll probably go into street view here and you can see it better. So it basically looks like this. And actually, let's see, at this time it was a little more overgrown. Right now there's a little bare area here that you can park in. And there is a gate here. It is okay with the property owner, my understanding, and I will be confirming this for the Christmas count to make sure that they're cool with it. You can kind of squeeze around the gate. Potentially you can, open the gate. It's not actually locked. It's just sort of secured. But if you do, be sure to restore it to the way you found it. And then you can kind of walk along this edge of the lake, hopefully, or the expanse of grassy, weedy, sparrow and bunting habitat otherwise. Basically, you can walk along this edge back and forth. And, they prefer that you do not walk the driveway. They'd like to have people stay out of the driveway. So there's like a split rail fence here. So, if you stay on this side, that's good. Don't wear your best shoes. It gets very muddy and sticky in there sometimes. But see what you can find in there. And often the best birds are kind of over in this end of it. That seems to be where the birds hang out. So that's Lake Jocelyn, or Expansive Weeds Jocelyn as it exists right now. The Ortega Ridge Pines. So this is a fun spot. This is way up at the western edge of our count circle, and it's just a really interesting thing that there's this little piece of habitat up above Summerland. So let's see, here's the salt marsh. We're a bird flying west along the coast. You get up here to, where are we at here? You go further. I lose my perspective and I forget where I am. All right, I'm gonna get perspective again. Yeah, we come on, where is it? Up here, here's Summerland, okay. So you come up here, you go, you travel along Via Real, so you're paralleling the freeway. You turn right on Greenwell Avenue, and you come up here, and there's the Greenwell Preserve here, which is a nice birding spot. But if you follow Greenwell Avenue as it wraps around to the left and goes up the hill, you go up this hill, and right up here you meet, I think it's Ortega Ridge Road. Is that what it's called? Yeah. And this intersection of Greenwell Avenue and Ortega Ridge Road is a really interesting birding spot, because this clump of trees right here, these are conifers. So we actually get some, some upper montane habitat, or the birdie equivalent of mountain habitat. And we get really interesting species in there that we don't get anywhere else in the count circle. There's a lot of red-breasted nuthatches there right now. I was in there a few weeks ago. There are often interesting rare warblers that show up there. There in the past have been, what did we have up there last year? I'm trying to remember. Craig, were you in that group that went in there? There was some special bird you guys got up there that I can't remember now what it was.
We got that white-throated sparrow over on the other side.
On Ortega Ridge Road, yeah, over by the reservoir, right?
Yeah. Definitely got the nuthatch, and we got a few other things in the Ortega Pines area.
You know what, we've had mountain chickadees in there. I think that's what I was trying to remember. I'm not sure if we had them last year, but in previous years, we've sometimes had mountain chickadees. Yeah, Eve, I see you've got a hand up.
I was going to say, it sounds like it might be a nice habitat for a Grace's warbler.
Is that, what was the good warbler we had in there just a few weeks ago? I guess now a few months ago. There was a really neat, not a Grace's warbler, but some other warbler we had up there. And now I'm not gonna be able to remember it. My brain is like an attic, and sometimes I can't find the thing I want. But yeah, it's a neat spot. And basically to bird there, and again, I'll just talk quickly about access. We'll go into Street View again. This little patch right here. So in the upper part of Greenwell Avenue, you can kind of pull over into this margin. You can get off the pavement. And then there's actually some trails that run through here. This is a private road, so you want to watch out for the cars, but the residents along it have been fine. I've never had any concerns from them about access, people walking the road, as long as you stay out of the way. But there's also a Montecito Trails Foundation trail. There's a trail that leads through here. It intersects with a trail that comes down here. There's actually a pretty extensive trail. It goes all the way down to this. There's some like horse paddocks down the hill down here. And there's the trail comes and it wraps along here, and it wraps around the edge of this valley here. there's a lot of really neat, really birdy habitat there. But this corner here with the interesting pines, excuse me, the interesting pine trees up here, that's the most important for me as a count organizer. That's where I really want to make sure we get some coverage on count day. So, and all of these places, I talk about, wanting to divvy up our forces for the day of the count. You can go anywhere you want in the run up to the count. Between now and December 19th, any birding you want to do at any of these spots, if it intrigues you, please go check it out. That's what I'm going to be doing as much of the time as I have available. And the more of us who are doing that, the better off it is for our ability to get to 160 species. Please may it be so on count day. Toro Canyon Park, another really cool spot with just habitat that we don't really have. I mean, it does really well for us. And am I gonna be able to find it? Yeah, I think so. It's kind of, if I was a bird, I'd be just lost flying over the landscape. I wouldn't know where I was. So up in here, yeah. So here's Toro Canyon Park. So we often get really interesting species at Toro Canyon Park. We had golden crowned kinglets there a lot of times in the count, and that's a great species for us. But brown creepers, have been, show up sometimes in there. I don't know if this is a particularly good year for brown creepers, but certainly if you can get in there and bird Toro Canyon Park before count day, keep your eyes peeled for little birds, little teensy birds, either climbing up and down the tree trunks or up in the tops of the trees. Those golden crowned kinglets, for me at least, are very frustrating to see. I'm looking at 100 kinglets and they're all ruby crowned, but if you keep at it, there could be a golden crowned in there too. Okay, are there any more places where they're habitat? Oh, Santa Monica Creek. So I wanted to finish with my personal favorite, just because it's really close to my house, so I'm there all the time. Santa Monica Creek is one of these spots that has this exotic planting that does really well with wintering vagrants. So to access that, you come down here to the end of El Caro Lane in Carpinteria, and you just park in this little circle, and then you can walk over, and there's a paved bike path that leads south along the creek. There's a dirt path that leads north along the creek, and there's a footbridge over the channelized creek right here. And right through here, this little section, there is a Cape honeysuckle hedge. Cape honeysuckle is a common suburban planting that has these like tubular orange flowers, lots of these little orange flowers, and nectar eating birds really love it. And for the last 4 years now, there has been an adult male orchard oriole that has been hanging out in that hedge, and it is back. I got decent, not great, but decent photos of it, last week. It's there. Hopefully it stays there through count day. Hopefully we find it on count day. There's a chance it's actually a different individual. 2 years ago, or maybe last year, I'm vague. On count day, we actually had an adult male and an immature male orchard oriole at that same location. So it's conceivable that there's been a changing of the guard, and that the adult male orchard oriole that's there now is not the same adult male orchard oriole that was there for the previous several years. But in any event, there's at least one adult male orchard oriole that was there a few weeks ago and will hopefully stay there. So, again, hopefully we get that bird on count day. And this is the not great photo of the adult male orchard oriole that I got the other day. So he's there, he's in the Cape honeysuckle. He's just waiting for count day so we can go in and count him. And that is it for my prepared slides. So if anyone has any questions or any, can be Christmas count related, can be unrelated to the Christmas count.
Hey, John, I have a question.
Yeah.
So obviously there's no more coffee bean and tea leaf, and maybe the COVID-19 will affect our ability to kind of gather, but that was one of my favorite parts, where like we came at noon, we did the check off, and then we went back out to get the stuff we hadn't got. Are we going to be able to do that this year? Have you thought about that?
Yeah, it's an unfortunate reality that this year we will not have any in-person gathering like that at noon. In fact, Coffee Bean and Tea Leaf is closed, so that's kind of sad too. But what I'm planning tentatively to do is to have a noon Zoom call like this, and we will have a live shared Google Docs spreadsheet of all the birds on count day, and I'm hoping to have a little demo of that at our next meeting of this group before the count. And we'll have a procedure for updating that during the day, and if people can update it on their smartphones in the field as they're birding, that's great. If they want to just submit eBird lists, sharing them with the Carp CBC eBird user, that will allow us to update it during the day as well. Joan Murdoch, who is one of the organizers of the Santa Barbara Christmas count, but who resides in our count circle, the Carpinteria circle, and typically birds and over at the western edge of the Carp count circle, is going to be home recuperating from a medical procedure on count day, and has generously offered to, assuming she's up to the task, to play the role of the sort of data hub for our updates throughout the day, which is hugely helpful. They had someone do something like that on the Santa Barbara count a year or two ago, and everyone talked about what a difference it made. That you had somebody who was fielding the lists and the reports as they came in, and updating the spreadsheet of what species they had and did not have. And somebody who's dedicated to doing that can really help us in the field to just keep bird watching, like mad bird watchers, nonstop as the minutes tick by, and we want to make the most of the day. But then to be able to get together at midday and kind of say, okay, let's take a breath. We all went out and had a great time this morning. Those of you who are done, thank you very much. You've done a great thing. Please go enjoy the rest of your day, not bird watching. Those of you, at a certain level of obsession who want to keep going, that's great. Here's the list of what we don't have. And the list can be sorted by, I think the way I had it done last year, and we'll probably do it this year, is there were category 1 birds were birds we'd had in every count up till then. Then there was category 2 that we'd had in like half or more of the counts. Category 3 was fewer than half. And category 4 we'd had once before or never, but had seen it during the scouting before the count. And so we can take the list of species that we don't have yet, and we can sort them by those categories. So like we have our needs list, we have our target species, and the category 1s can be sorted to the top, which, again, last year, painfully in my memory, included red-winged blackbirds, which we did not get last year. We must, if we do nothing else this year, we must get red-winged blackbirds, or I'll never live it down. But that gives us, a target, and we can divvy it up. We can basically say, oh, I can go over here to Lake Jocelyn, which I remember doing with you last year, I think, or the year before. We'll go over here and look for this bird, or we'll go over here and look for this other bird. And that's a lot of fun too. It's sort of like, the later innings of count day, when we go out and run around and try and fill in those gaps. Maybe not as much scientific utility to that part of the count effort. That's more of just, the fun of getting our number as high as we can. Okay, any other questions? Brody, do you have a hand up?
Yeah, 2 things. Number 1, the bird refuge isn't part of the Carpinteria bird count, is it?
No, it is not. The Andre Clark Bird Refuge by the freeway there?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, no, that is in the Santa Barbara count circle. So you are
Okay.
you're allowed to bird there, but for every time you bird there, you must also bird in the Carpinteria count circle, or we'll view you as a traitor to the Carpinteria circle.
Okay.
No, that's fine. You can bird there as much as you want.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's in the Santa Barbara circle.
I was just checking. And 2, do you have to share your list with the SBCO birding thing to have them count it as the Christmas count?
So I'm hearing a couple of different things there. So SBCO birding is the email list, the sort of group email list, and yeah, that's not involved in this, but that's okay. They all sound the same. But the Carp CBC eBird user is what I ask people to share their eBird list when they're doing the Christmas count. That's optional. You don't have to do it that way. If you don't do it that way, you can keep a checklist on a napkin if you want. You can do it however you want. And you need to get the information to me somehow. If you keep your list in eBird and you share it with the Carp CBC eBird user, that gets it to me right away as soon as you submit it. So that's the easiest thing for me. And what I actually do, in the weeks after the count, there's this kind of labor-intensive process of putting all the info together and preparing the submission that none of you have to worry about, that you should be happy you don't have to worry about, because it's kind of a pain. But it's fun on some level too. But what I end up doing is I take all the paper lists and all the lists that were not done via eBird, and I put them in as lists in eBird under the Carp CBC account, just because that lets me use the Carp CBC account to sort all the information and see all the species counts and do my deduping that I like to do. Like, okay, there's these different species were reported on these different lists, and I need to figure out, what's the final number to report for the count. So no, you do not have to, but it is preferred by me if you can.
How do you? I'm just wondering. I don't know.
We'll demo that probably in the next meeting. I'll do a demo of actual procedures, and I'll get my phone out, and I'll have my phone screen in the group, and I'll just kind of show how you do it.
Yeah, thanks.
It's very simple. It is not hard at all. And
Do you
again,
do
very-
it? Do you do it on do you share it online or when you're doing it on the app?
You can share it from within the app. When you submit your eBird list within the app, on the last screen, the review screen, when you're about to submit your list, it has like the number of people in your birding party, and it just by default will be 1. If you increase that to a number above 1, like you make it 2, it will say, oh, do you wish to share this list with another member of your party? And what you can actually do is, you can increase it to 2, even if there was just 1 of you, to sort of have this phantom user, this phantom birder, the Carp CBC birder who was with you, and enter Carp CBC in the window where it asks you who you want to share the list with. And then you can actually reduce the number back down to 1, and it'll still share it with the Carp CBC user, so like a trick. But
Okay.
yeah, and you can also do it afterwards. When you go to the eBird website, you can share the list from there. There's different ways to do it.
Okay, thank you.
Let's see. Tom Beland has reminded me that it's a magnolia warbler that we had up on Ortega Ridge. Yes, that was the really cool bird, which I loved seeing because it is the bird on the cover of the Big Sibley field guide. So every time I pick up my Big Sibley field guide, which of course I love because I'm a big Sibley fan, I see that magnolia warbler staring at me, and I'm like, oh boy, I'd love to see a magnolia warbler. So up there at the Ortega Ridge Pines, I got to see a magnolia warbler. It was really a great day. And Nancy, thanks for the informative session on the birding hotspots. Yes, well, you're welcome, Nancy. Thank you for participating.
And Eve has a question for you.
Oh yeah, Eve. Yeah, sorry, I missed your hand raise.
In addition to the count that you do on the actual day, is there also a count that covers a time period, a bigger time period? And what are those dates?
Yes, so I don't know offhand what the actual dates are. I could find it looking at a calendar, but basically the 3 days before count day to the 3 days after count day. So the 7-day span for which the official count day is right in the middle, that is count week. And when you submit your birds for the count, you get to include species that you saw during count week, but did not see on count day, which is always kind of a bittersweet thing for me as the, competitive count compiler. I really wanted that bird on count day, and I know it was there because it was there during count week, but we get to submit that data as well. So yeah, those of you who are out there birding to help scout before count day, when we hit that point 3 days before count day, that becomes really significant. Like I'm going to be reminding people and encouraging people and begging people to go out and bird in the circle between now and the count. But 3 days before the count, I'm going to get really annoying about it because now it's part of the count week window. And then after the count, the birds that we, heartbreakingly did not get on count day, that's kind of my mission for those 3 days after is I go out and I make sure I get them. So at least we can report them for count week, the ones that I know were there, but we just didn't happen to get. Yeah, so count week, that is what that is. Any other questions or comments, Tom?
John, one of the things that we've done, and for any reason, if someone feels that they can't get out to do the count on count day, we have birded in our backyard and put that in. Yeah, so I thought that's good to know.
That is very good to know, and I should emphasize that. I'm weird. I'm out there chasing after species and trying to run up my numbers, and it's a silly game that's fun, but it's not of any particular scientific value. The people who do backyard counts on count day, people who just go look at their feeder and put in a list, that's of actual scientific value. That's actually contributing to the long-term data collection process that the Christmas bird count is. That goes back more than a century now. And it's those counts of common species from stationary counts from backyards. That's what's actually interesting, you know, in terms of bird conservation and sort of bigger questions of bird science. That's what's really useful. You know, the scientists, I don't think particularly care, you know, oh, Carpinteria fell too short of their 160 there, Trevor. Oh, how sad for, no, they could care less. What they really care about is how many rock pigeons did we have? You know, how many starlings did we have? How many house finches were there? How many lesser goldfinches? You know, so that sitting at your feet or counting those everyday species, that's actually useful. And that's probably a more noble way for you to contribute to the count than running around trying to find the one stray bird that's lost, that doesn't belong there, that we desperately want to have in our species total. Okay, any other questions? Comments? Are you inspired? Are you going to go out and birdwatch? You know, I was joking before the meeting started. This always happens to me. So we're out of town this week. That's why I'm not in my usual setting. We're at a vacation condo up in the mountains in Mammoth Lakes, and there's, you know, great birding up here, and it snowed, and that's exciting. And I saw a white-headed woodpecker, and that's really cool. But of course, the minute I leave town, there's, you know, an update about a rare species that I really want to see in Santa Barbara County. And then it continues to be seen. So there's a black Burnian warbler, a first-year female black Burnian warbler at the Log Me Inn complex out in Western Goleta. And it showed up on the first day I left, and it's still there every day, reports coming in. And it's like the exact tree. I know right where to find it. I know exactly where to go look for this bird. So hopefully it'll stay there for a few more days. And if it is still there come Sunday is when I'll be back in town, you know exactly where to find me at sunrise on Sunday, because I will be standing under that tree, hoping to see that black Burnian.
5.5 hour drive, John. Just drive and go back.
That's true. I should just pop down there, get up early tomorrow and find the bird, and then be back up in Mammoth. My wife won't even know I've left. Yeah, no, I'm not, even I am not that obsessed about adding one to my year list, but I do hope the bird is still there come this weekend. Okay, well, thank you, everybody. I appreciate you hanging around. Appreciate you coming back every time we have a meeting. The next meeting is in 2 weeks, which will be sort of early December, right? So that will be not quite, there'll be one more meeting just before the Christmas count. But hopefully at the next meeting, I'll talk about actual procedures and kind of demo how to, you know, do this stuff, how to use the spreadsheet so you can keep track of which species we have and don't have on count day, how to enter your list and share it with the Carp CBC user, and any other questions you guys have. In the meantime, you know, if you're inclined to do the count, thank you. Go fill out the form, you know, go to the carp.cars.org/CBC and click through to the sign up form. I have been lax in getting the word out about the count, so I'll hopefully get an announcement out to the SBCO birding email list, and I'll start sending lots of spam to all the people who've participated in the count in the past. Say, oh, the count's coming, and I'll, you know, try and line up the really adventurous types to get out to Jameson Lake or go out on the boat, or, you know, or the real hotshot birders. I'll see if I can find a way to entice them to come, you know, spend a few hours birding on December 19th in the Carpinteria Circle. All right, well, thank you all very much, and I will see you guys in 2 weeks.
Good. Thank you, John. Thank you.
So long.
Thanks.
Thank you.